adventure for whatever comes our way. Yeah, darling, gonna make it happen. Take the world in love embrace. Fire all of your guns at once and explode into space. I like smoking lightning, heavy metal thunder, racing with the wind, and the feeling that I'm under. And I'm gonna make it happen. Take the world in a loving embrace. Fire all of those guns at once and explode into space. Like a true nature's child, we were born to be wild. We can fly so high, I never wanna die. Born to be wild. Born to be wild. Some motor running, out on the highway, looking for adventure, for whatever comes our way. Yeah, darling, gonna make it happen. Take the world in a loving embrace. Fire all of the guns at once and explode into space. Like a true nature's child, we were born to be wild. We can fly so high, never wanna die. Born to be
So, are we on? Have you ever had to get the attention of 135 people who've been drinking to say something at a mic? That's how you do it. And I learned that from Peter Soumalias. Thank you. On behalf of Georgina and the whole Soumalias family, welcome to the Phoenix. And welcome to Peter's Life Celebration. My name's Jack Tomic. I'm a friend of Peter's. And tonight there will be music. And there's going to be a beautiful video. And there's going to be a few speakers, including me. So before I start, I want to give you all warning. I never let the facts get in the way of a good story. I met Peter in 1999 when I joined the board of Walk of Fame and worked with him through the board. And it was in 2001 where after 30 years of living in Vancouver, I got transferred to Toronto. I still question that decision. So I phoned Peter one day and I told him the news, and of course Peter wanted to take over my life instantly. Where are you going to live? Where are you working? Where are your boys going to school? How can I come? Can I pack? Can I drive the truck back for you? And I said, well, you know, first of all, Peter, I want to find a school for my 2 teenage sons at that time who are here tonight. And he said, I have a great school my son Yanni goes through. And he gave me the phone number and he said, call them and get your boys into this school. So the next day, I called the school. And of course, I was 3 months late from registration time. Peter phones the next day. And he said, so, how's the school? And I said, well, I'm 3 months late, so I'm going to have to look for another school. And he said, oh. And he said, I'll be right back to you. And he hung up. 5 minutes later, I get a call from the headmaster and president of the school saying, hi, Jack, and he introduced himself. He said, I understand your boys want to come to our college. When are you going to come in and register them? I want to do it myself. I hang up the phone, and I phone Peter. And he said, so? And I said, well, the boys are going to get registered in the school. And then he said these beautiful words that describes Peter perfectly. He said, you know, if you don't get the answer you want, it's because you're talking to the wrong person. So before we get rolling, first a few thank yous. I want to thank Justin from Mezzi's Restaurant for the catering tonight. Beautiful, and his staff. And Justin is also donating 100 meals to the Red Door Family Shelter in Peter's name. So beautiful. And thanks to Lisa and the Phoenix staff who made putting this event together absolutely easy. You think they threw a party here every night the way they operated. It looks beautiful. So I have to tell you, 2 months ago, I was here with Ali and Georgina to just check things out and talk to Lisa. And we got around to talking about the bar. And she said, you're going to have mostly wine drinkers. And I said, oh yeah, it's going to be mostly wine. Wine and beer is great. She said, well, I want to tell you, we use plastic here. And I said, no, I didn't say it. Georgina said, why don't you use glassware? And Lisa said, well, sometimes the crowd doesn't like who's on stage and glassware becomes a weapon. So I went, damn, I'm on stage. Plastic's going to be perfect. And now let me introduce the band, because they're going to be playing for us tonight like crazy. On the drums, Mark. Roberto on bass. Jordan on vocals and the guitar. Now we've also got vocals from, I don't know where they went. Oh, there they come. We got vocals from Theo. Where are you? Theo, you're hiding someplace. You'll hear him later. And you just heard from Selena and Keisha. Stunning. And on the keyboards, none other than Mr. Bill King. Now, you heard Born to be Wild, and I'm going to tell you my story about Born to be Wild and how you get a crowd's attention. I worked along Peter at many Walk of Fame galas in the early days, as many of you did. And he was forever dialing everything from year to year. It was never tight enough, it was never fast enough, it was never on schedule. Peter was always trying to make the impossible possible, and that was Peter. So let me take you back to 2004 and the gala. The show, of course, runs long. Then you have to load 1,400 people from the Sony Center into buses and take them to the Sheraton Center. Not an easy task. Well, when the crowd got there, they headed straight for the bars and were talking and drinking and drinking and talking. This is not the first time Peter couldn't get people to go into the banquet room, ever. So I was standing with Peter, we were talking about this, and he had that beautiful Cheshire cat smile. We all know it. And I said, what's up? And he said, I'll tell you in a minute. So back to the show. One of the most exciting moments of the show earlier was the introduction of John K.F. Steppenwolf into the Walk of Fame. Hawksley Workman and his band were on stage at the show and lit up the Sony Center. Everybody was just rocking and rolling. His presenter comes up. It's Peter Fonda. Peter Fonda's had 3 martinis too many. And he does a terrible job. So John Kay walks up, gets his award, and they both walk off the stage. Well, one walks, one stumbles. But you could feel the disappointment in the crowd as they moved on to the next inductee. Now, take you back to the bar, and Peter had that smile on his face. Right then, he ducked into the banquet room for about 1 second and came back out to me. And within a minute, with the doors still closed, were the guitar riffs of Born to Be Wild. After about a minute, he had the doors opened, and the crowd just surged in, and there on a stage was Hawksley Workman and the band doing the riffs from Born to Be Wild. Somehow Peter had smuggled them from the Sony Center onto the stage at the Sheraton Center. Tricky guy. Now, there were still about 600 people out drinking, and Peter had that smile again, that Cheshire Cat smile, and he said, "Watch this." And about 10 seconds later, there was that voice coming from the banquet hall, that deep baritone voice, and it was John Kay singing Born to Be Wild. In 30 seconds, thanks, I need the break. In 30 seconds, the other 600 people were in the ballroom and crushing the stage with the other 600. I looked at him and said, "Well, you did the impossible again." He smiled, that smile, and said, "Well, now that I've got them in, I don't think I'll be able to get them to sit down at the tables." That's my friend Peter. He looked always to surprise and delight and make the impossible possible. With that, I'd like you to stand if you can, grab your glass, and we'll give him a toast. To the man who made impossible possible. Peter. Now, one of Peter's favorite things in the world, and I had the chance to see it a few times while I was the chairman, was making the call. Peter relished in making the calls to the people who were going to get inducted. And he always figured out a way to place the calls in 15-minute increments so he could do it all in one afternoon. I had a chance to sit with him a couple times, and he was in absolute glee making these calls. Again, surprising and delighting. I've been asked a few times since Peter checked out to describe him in one word, and I found that one word in looking at our next speaker. And the word for Peter is unsinkable. So she's coming up now. She's a world champion, a mother of 4. One child for each one of her Olympic and Pan American Games medals. An author, an inspiration for sure, an inspiration to all. Oh yeah, and she has a star on the Walk of Fame too. Ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker, Miss Silken Lauman.
Thank you, Jack, and it's such an honor and a pleasure to be here tonight celebrating Peter and really the legacy that he's left. And I didn't know him the way that so many of you in the room knew him, but I was given the gift of what he created. And Jack is right, that phone call is something that we never expect, especially as Canadians, because we don't think of ourselves as famous or stars or any of those things. And I remember getting the call that I was going to be in Canada's Walk of Fame. And I sort of stopped. I'm like, are you sure you got the right person? Because I'm not a movie star, and I'm not a hockey player. I'm a rower. You know, it was really, really special, and the night was very special. I'm so proud to be part of the Walk of Fame. But most importantly, I think that Peter understood how important it is to celebrate and appreciate and honor excellence, all kinds of excellence. Because I think in Canada, we don't do enough of that. That celebrating, that shining the spotlight on the people who make this country so great. And why is that important? Why is something like the Walk of Fame important? Yes, it's a gorgeous night. It was really one of the highlights of all of the honors that I've received in my life, it really was such a special evening. But it's not just the night. It's what the evening and the honor and the Walk of Fame actually creates, which is this living story of what it means to be Canadian, to be the best in the world at something, to give the best of yourself to the thing that you love, whether it's rowing or it's hockey or it's music or your dream was to go to the moon, you know? And what I think is so beautiful about what Peter created, and with the help of so many others, and I know, many of you in the room were part of helping it, and I always say when you do something big like this, you're lucky if you still have friends, because you ask so many favors. It takes so much to create something like this, but you're leaving a legacy. You're leaving a legacy for every young person who wants to know if they can be great, if they can do it, if their dreams have any chance of coming true. The last thing that I want to say is, I think in our lifetime we all want the same thing, don't we? We want to have our talents and abilities animated in some way in our life. We want the chance to pursue those talents and abilities. And Peter did that. And he did leave a legacy. And he can say that he made the world a better place.
It was just that burst of energy. There was just never a dull moment with Peter.
He would not take no for an answer. He was incredible.
Everyone says, let's give back. He actually did it.
What's important about what Peter Soumalias started is the idea that we celebrate great Canadians.
He was always a proud Canadian. I mean, he just wore the star and the flag as a badge of honor.
I'd like to thank Peter Soumalias for his vision in founding Canada's Walk of Fame.
What a man, what a man, what a man, what a mighty good man. He's a mighty, mighty good man.
When Peter started Canada's Walk of Fame, he brought the biggest stars.
Barbara Ann Scott and Bobby Orr and Rich Little. I mean, you just go on and on and on about the people we brought in, and they had complete faith that we could pull it off.
It was an idea he had, and it was bound and determined to do whatever was necessary to make it happen.
And the stars came.
Look to the sky. Don't ever let it pass you by.
He was working, 18-hour days, but I never saw him sweat, which allowed all of us to have a sense of calm when we were all frantic about, oh my God, if James Cameron's coming in here, what if we screw this up?
He would do whatever was necessary to get the right person to do the right job at the right time.
I think it's a combination of the classic Canadian immigrant story, coming to Canada with nothing, and that this country being able to offer him everything.
It never crossed my mind that he was anything but this incredibly tenacious Canadian, thinking that we are in fact underserved by our own.
Because it does what we should be doing, which is celebrate Canadians in all areas of life, not just the arts.
I believe that Canada's Walk of Fame continues to thrive and continues to be important because we as Canadians do have a great sense of pride.
I'm proud to be Canadian, and I hope I can continue to represent us.
The joy and pride that I get from being a Canadian.
Thank you, Canada.
He realized that young people, they need light at the end of the tunnel, but they need light at the entrance to the tunnel.
You can do whatever you want. Don't let anybody tell you different.
Having the stars in the streets of Toronto, in our entertainment district, in our biggest city, is also a great legacy for Peter Soumalias.
I was so thrilled. I mean, I called my parents in Mississauga, and said, you won't believe I'm getting this star on the sidewalk, and it was a really big moment for me and for them.
I think Peter's legacy is first and foremost a man who loves his family. And I think it's appropriate to discuss the fact that 10 years ago when Peter became ill, his tenacity served him so voracious in terms of his getting back up.
It was quite something to witness, for sure. As hard as my dad has worked his entire life building the legacy of Walk of Fame, building the legacy of his family, I definitely say that was the hardest I've ever seen him work.
He was a kind, considerate, generous man whose unprecedented support and patronage of Canadian culture helped us define who we are and gives us pride in who we are today.
For this we are forever grateful, filled with the inspiration that Peter gave us. Thank you, Peter.
I think it's important for the next generations to know, whose shoulders we're standing on in so many ways.
What can I say about Peter? I can only say he'll be in my heart like he will be with all of you.
So please, everyone, let's celebrate Peter Soumalias' vision tonight and do your best to inspire the next generation of dreamers. No matter where you're from, no matter how humble your beginnings are, you can do this. And that's what Canada's Walk of Fame, I think, is accomplishing every day.
Where we have gone with this and what's so important about Peter's legacy is that some of the greatest stars in this country are not the well-known figures in Hollywood and hockey players. They are great researchers and doctors, entrepreneurs, business people. They are builders of this country.
To me, to see how it's grown, to see that now it's being celebrated in the individual Canadian's hometown, those were things that he talked about and wanted to take it to. And so it's amazing to see some of those things become fulfilled.
And not only have these stars been recognized, but now we have a chance to recognize Peter and allow him his star.
You know what? Peter was an incredible, I miss him a lot. He was a great dad, he was a great friend, he was a great husband, he was a great son, he was a great brother, he was a great guy.
He never gave up from the moment he arrived to Canada to the last day of him on this earth. He just never gave up, and that strength is so inspiring to us and is something that we will continue to honor him by.
I swear I lived and lived. Oh, I did it all. I did it all. I did it all. Oh, I swear I lived.
So I face the final curtain. My friend, I'll say it clear. I'll state my case, for which I'm certain. I've lived a life that's full. I've traveled each and every highway. Much more than this, I did it my way. Regrets, I've had a few, but then again, too few to mention. I did what I had to do, saw through without exemption. I planned each charted course, each careful step along the byway, and much more than this, I did it my way. Yes, there were times, I'm sure you knew, when I bit off more than I could chew. But oh, through it all, when there was doubt, I ate it up and spit it out. But I faced it all, and I stood tall, did it my way. I've loved, I've laughed and cried, I've had my share of losing. And now as tears subside, I find it all so amusing to think I did all that, and oh, may I say, not in a shy way.
Good evening, everyone. I think I've had the chance to meet everyone here, but just in case I haven't, I'm Paul. I'm Peter's youngest son. And on behalf of me and my mom and my siblings here, I just want to start by saying thank you for being here tonight, to celebrate my dad with the food and the drinks and the musical performances, especially after the 2 years we've all had together. It's very special. So I just want to start off by saying thank you for being here, and thank you for being part of this memory with us. I'm going to be honest. I had a difficult time deciding on what exactly I wanted to say tonight. Should I just keep to happy stories and, make everyone laugh? Should I be too scared or too worried of sharing sad stories? Should I speak to the dad that, only his son would know, or should I try to speak to the Peter that everyone in this room would understand and relate to? A piece of advice I received from a friend was share the memory that you remember the best, because there's probably a reason why your mind is clutching onto that memory. And as I considered that, the memory that immediately came to mind wasn't one that was too profound or meaningful at the time, but as time had gone on, I'd pulled that memory closer and closer. And as I've gone through this exercise of deciding what to say tonight, it's become pretty clear why I've grown so attached to this memory. And hopefully, since my father's passing and after tonight, everyone here is able to find similar resolve and hold close the memories of my father that best reflect who he was to you. During my first semester at McGill, I had come home a few times. First for the Walk of Fame Gala in September, then Thanksgiving in October, and then for a third time in November. My mother's work had brought her to Montreal a few times, but since I had left for university, I hadn't really had an opportunity to spend, some meaningful time with my dad. So we had decided I would come home for this weekend in November. We would go for dinner, we would spend a lot of time together, and then we'd finish the weekend by going to the Grey Cup game being hosted in Toronto that Sunday. So the weekend comes, and he picks me up from the train station that Friday evening. We planned to go out for dinner, but I wanted to head home that night first to say hi to my mom and drop off my things. Throughout the car ride home, though, my dad was a little tense and a little bit more stressed than usual. I didn't really think much of it at the time, and we more or less carried on conversation as if nothing was wrong. As we pulled into the garage, though, and parked the car, I'm about to get out of the car, and my dad kind of holds me back. He's like, Paul, your mom she's a bit upset. And, naturally, when someone hears that Georgina was upset, the reasonable next question to ask is, oh my God, what did Peter say? My dad's mom, my yaya, used to call my dad Tuvlo, which in Greek translates to a man whose head is a brick. I'm sure everyone in this room can think of a time that they experienced my father's brick head, so I'm sure you can all relate. Anyway, so I asked him, oh God, what did you say? Kind of stuttering, I don't know. I said something, she got upset, what do you want me to say? My parents, both my mother and my father, have and had enormous, enormous hearts. But as their son, I had this privilege of witnessing the collisions between my mom's strong character and my dad's stubbornness. So this was nothing new to me. I rolled my eyes, I get out of the car and I head inside. My dad kind of lingering behind me like an embarrassed puppy, scared of walking back into the lion's den. Anyway, so I head inside, I say hi to my mom, give her a big hug, and my dad and I head to dinner. We lived near Bloor West Village at the time, and this new kind of fancy style gastro pub had opened up a few blocks away. While we walked there, I softened him up with some, nonsensical first-year stories that I'm sure he was dying to hear. We arrive at the restaurant, and the second we sit down, my dad opens up like a complete book, almost as if this talk we were about to have was premeditated in some way. Without prompt and without me even asking, he just begins to recount his entire life to me. He started with his childhood, growing up in northern Greece in an area called Kastoria. Northern Greece at the time was, quite war-torn and quite impoverished. The primary industry of Kastoria was fur trading. So hopefully that gives you an idea of the kind of time and place my father came from. Continuing on to his immigration into Canada and the life he lived in the 70s and 80s, sparing no detail, and honestly having a lot of fun, recalling some of these stories about him and his best friend Afif. I can't see him, I'm sure he's here tonight, and all the fun they had together. In addition to the fun and the jovial stories, for the first time, we talked about his life when he lived in London, Ontario, and he shared with me details and stories about his first marriage and raising his first 4 children, my siblings, Stefan, Yanni, Marissa, and Alexandra. For the most part, I stayed, completely quiet and didn't really want to interrupt him because this was the first time I had this window into my dad. And as he continued on and began talking about his introduction into Canada's entertainment industry, I had to interrupt him and just get some more details. Before COVID, and in the early 2000s, Toronto experienced its first pandemic, SARS. Toronto is actually one of the hardest hit cities in the world by SARS, much like Milan was during COVID. And after the pandemic subsided, my father was involved, and the pandemic had absolutely cratered Toronto's tourism industry, and there was this huge initiative by the city to try to lure people back to Toronto. So after the pandemic, my father was involved in organizing what would be the most attended music festival in the history of the country, also known as Molson Canadian Rocks for Toronto, or more commonly known, SARS-Stock. At this point, my dad is just racing through time, so I had to stop him when he got here. Wait, hold on, I said to him. You, my dad, the guy who didn't see a paved road since he moved to Canada, you helped organize a concert with the Rolling Stones, AC/DC, Rush, the Guess Who, and I said kind of confused, Justin Timberlake. Jack mentioned that smile that my dad had, so he had the same smile. He's like, yep. And this concert that you guys wanted to throw to lure people back to Toronto after the pandemic, you guys called this concert SARS-Stock. Funny, right? 800,000 people attended SARS-Stock in Downsview Park that summer. Now, I knew this all happened, but hearing it from my dad and kind of coupled with how his storytelling began, it became pretty clear to me how unbelievable my dad's story really is. And the thing is, my father never, ever painted himself as this immigrant, come-from-nothing story, worked really hard, yada, yada, yada. The way he did describe it, though, is he framed it all around opportunity. My father came from a land with very little to no opportunity, and really by no means of his own, was quite literally picked up and placed in a land where opportunity was all around him. And at this point in our dinner, the storytelling had just completely stopped, and I began flooding him with questions because, as I said, how really unbelievable my dad's story was becoming clearer and clearer. So I said to him, yeah, but Dad, it's not like you came to a new country, went to school, became an accountant, worked really hard, climbed the corporate ladder, and achieved the American dream. You came to Canada, didn't really go to university, didn't have a single connection into the entertainment industry, and now you're telling me you helped organize the biggest music festival this country's ever seen. As I say this out loud, this sounds kind of made up. And he said to me, yeah, Paul, you have to understand, it's not really just about hard work. You have to recognize opportunity, and to be honest, I didn't really care about failing. When you come from quite literally nothing, the consequences of failure are more or less negligible. I came from nothing. If I failed, I would still have nothing. Who cares? I might as well have fun and try to make a living in a way that I would enjoy. I have a few friends here tonight, and they'll be the first ones to tell you that I can be kind of cynical sometimes. So when he said this, I said, okay, Dad, what about me? What do you mean, what about you? I don't come from nothing. You and Mom have worked incredibly hard to provide me with a life of considerable privilege. we've had a few drinks now, so we know he's kind of getting frustrated. Paul, you're misunderstanding what I'm saying. Everyone, doesn't matter if you're born in a village in northern Greece or your dad is Bill Gates. Everyone starts from their own zero. And it's no one else's responsibility except your own to recognize when opportunity is in front of you. If everyone here were presented with 5 opportunities, most of us would, first weigh them, consider them, think about which one we'd have the best chance of succeeding at, and then probably pursue that one. My dad, on the other hand, would not hesitate for a second and pursue all 5 opportunities simultaneously and indiscriminately. I think the headline of the Toronto Star article was, "With naive fearlessness." I'm going to stop there because I think I've painted enough of a picture that everyone here can kind of imagine how the rest of this dinner went. Up until now, this still may seem like a stereotypical father-son conversation, and still not quite clear why I chose to share this story with you. This dinner we had happened in November 2012. A month later, my relationship with my father would change forever. Everyone in this room's relationship with my father would change forever. My father's whole MO was take advantage of opportunity when it is in front of you. He understood the role that chance plays in everyone's life. Sometimes chance works in your favor. From my father's perspective, he was lucky to have parents who took the unimaginable risk of coming to a brand new world. Much of their family and many of their friends did not and never left Castoria. So yeah, chance is good. For everyone in this room, chance has been pretty good. For some people in this room, and you know who you are, chance has been really, really, really quite good. And sometimes chance is bad. And sometimes chance is heartbreakingly devastating. During the time soon after my father's stroke, many people would refer to this stroke as a tragedy. The man who loved to speak had his ability to speak taken from him. Whenever my dad and my mom would travel, they would walk every square inch of wherever it was they were visiting. He loved to dance. He loved to play sports. None of this he would ever be able to do ever again. And as I say this, it is easy to understand why this label of tragedy could be attached to what happened to my father. But a tragedy is a story with a sad ending. There is never a lesson learned, no resolve found, just rotten sadness, and the story ends. Look around tonight. Does this seem like a sad ending to any of you? We're all here eating and drinking. We have live musical performances. I can promise you, if he's up there watching this, there's no chance he's calling this a tragedy. Us all celebrating in his name, his family and his friends giving speeches about him. Quite honestly, this was probably his bloody dream, to be honest. As time went on since he's passed, I've thought a lot about the chapters of my father's life. And I've come to realize that tragedy isn't when something devastating happens to a man who leaves this incredible, almost made-up life and makes unbelievable memories with the people that he loved. That is not a tragedy. A true and terrifying tragedy is the story of someone who has a voice and does not speak, has 2 legs and does not run, and lives life indifferent to the opportunities in front of them. My father's story and the theme of tonight is not about what happened to my father. It is about what he made happen. And just like tonight, the theme of Canada's Walk of Fame isn't to glorify or to idealize. It's to celebrate. Celebrate the incredible stories of what Canadians make happen. So let us all celebrate tonight what my father made happen. Don't get me wrong, the past 9 years ranged from sad to unbearably devastating. But now that my father's life is over, I'm so thankful to have the memories of him to keep his story alive. Much like the one I shared with you tonight about our dinner, and much like I'm sure all of the memories you all have of him. I need to take the microphone out of this part, I'm sorry. I can hear my dad in my ear right now saying, "So help me God, Paul, if you forget this part, I'm gonna be so pissed." I didn't tell you about this part of my speech, Mom. If y'all remember, my story began with a little bit bickering between my mom and my dad. The truth is, you can't tell the story of my father without telling the story of my mother. There's no one on this planet who he loved more than you. For 9 years, 9 years, you cared for him every second you were awake. Not to mention carrying an entire business, an entire family on your back. You know, if there was a textbook written on tackling adversity, I think you would be the author, the publisher, the editor, and then when they do a picture book, you would also be the illustrator. You know, I think parents try to enable their kids with, you know, the tools necessary to tackle life, and I think I could speak on behalf of myself and my siblings here. The example you set is second to none. And I think you're, I just want to say thank you. Okay, lastly, so on behalf of me, my mom, Georgina, my siblings, Yanni, Marissa, and Alexandra, I want to give a very, 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 very big thank you to Jack Tomic, Gary Slate, Derek Ross, and Randy Lennox for the most, just honestly, the most incredible evening tonight. Another special thank you to the Toronto Star for their support and all the help they've had in telling my father's story. And again, just to all of you, you know, I think of, we're all kind of turning the page on my father's last chapter, and for all of us to turn that page together is very special. So again, thank you to you. Okay, we have one more musical performance tonight. So enjoy it, and please everyone have a good evening.
I'm not scared of dying, and I don't really care. If there's peace you find in dying, well then let the time be near. If there's peace you find in dying, oh let dying's time be near. Just bundle up my coffin, 'cause it's
cold way down there. I hear that it's cold way down there, yeah. Crazy cold way down there. And when I die and when I'm gone, there'll be one child born in this world to carry on, to carry on. My troubles are many, they're as deep as a well. I can swear there ain't no heaven, but I pray there ain't no hell. I swear there ain't no heaven, but I pray there ain't no hell. 'Cause all I ask of living is my dying will tell, oh, that my dying will tell, yeah. Oh, that my dying will tell. And when I die and when I'm gone, there'll be one child born in this world to carry on, to carry on, yeah. Give me my freedom for as long as I be. All I ask of living is to have no chains on me. All I ask of living is to have no chains on me. And all I ask of dying is to go naturally. Yeah, I wanna go naturally. Well, here I go. Hey! Well, here come the devil, right behind you. Well, look out, children. Hey, hey, hey. Don't wanna go by the devil. Don't wanna go by the demon. Don't wanna go by Satan. Don't wanna die uneasy. Just let me go naturally. And when I die, and when I'm dead, dead and gone, there'll be one child born in this world to carry on, to carry on.